Good evening, and thanks for joining tonight's TI Technology webinar, hosted by Texas Instruments. Earlier this year, our presenters shared lessons designed to help students use technology in a way that makes math topics more accessible. She's back with a follow-up webinar, which will provide additional activities to help you engage your students who hate math. My name is Mike Houston, and I'm the moderator for this event. I teach algebra and calculus near Pittsburgh, where I use TI technology to make those tough to teach, tough to learn concepts accessible to all my students. Growing up, Ellen didn't even consider being a teacher because teachers either had to deal with running noses or wet pants, or they had to give boring lectures all day. After she received her bachelor's degree in business administration and marketing, she was asked to teach a group of teenagers at her church. Ellen discovered her love of teaching older kids and was reminded of how much she loves math. Ellen went back to school for her teaching certificate and started her journey in education. Now she keeps her students on their toes, wondering what they will do next. Will they create carnival games and invite the whole school into play? Will they drive rovers around the school? Will they purchase their first car or become a zombie? No one ever knows what will happen next. Sometimes, not even Mrs. Pie. It's great to have you with us, Ellen.
Thank you.
At this point, Ellen's going to talk through the agenda for tonight.
All right, guys. Those of you that were at my first presentation, you got to learn a lot about me. I'm not going to share too much about me. In fact, hardly anything other than I'm up here in Anchorage, Alaska. And I love to do activities where we are working on applied math, not just worksheets, not just formulas, but actually applying math. If you were not there for my first presentation, there is a link that you can click on, and I would strongly encourage you to do so because all of my material, lots and lots of references, I have links to that in the first presentation. So please click on that. This presentation, we're mainly going to be focusing on how to teach, how to use activities and projects with kids that just really hate math. It's very different to do that with struggling students than it is with students that just love math and come to class every day just really loving it. Total different way to teach, and so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. You'll be able to see some of the projects I've done with my kids, and so on. At the end, Michael, do you want to explain what the webinar drawing is?
Absolutely, yeah. Be sure to stick around at the end because one lucky winner will be getting a graphing calculator, TI graphing calculator of their choice tonight. So that'll happen at the end. And Ellen, just one expected outcome for us tonight.
Oh, yes. So I really want those of you that were here for my first presentation, I want you guys to have a deeper understanding of the tools needed to teach math to students who hate math. And if this is the first time you've seen this presentation or you've been to one of my presentations, hopefully you will be inspired to try out activities and projects with your struggling students.
Awesome. Ellen, thanks so much. You should have control. Feel free to share your screen.
All right. I had everything set up prior, so hopefully it all works now. Okay, so this is pictures of me, my email address. So if you don't get anything, please write down that email address. And yes, I know my last name is really long and hard to spell. It is phonetic, and the good news is my students get to call me Miss Pie, so that's something nice for my students. Like I said earlier, this is part 2. In my first presentation, I spent quite a bit of time explaining a little bit about me and my background, my history. Talked a lot about some of our kids, some of the main characteristics of kids who don't like math and really struggle with it. We focused on a large part of the presentation on why we should teach with activities and projects. And then we did talk about a little bit about how to do it. I had lots of resources in the first presentation, lots of links to different sites where you can get project ideas. I don't have those links included in this presentation, but we're going to look at a lot of examples, and you guys will have a chance to ask me questions, find out, what were the pitfalls of the projects that I'm going to go over. I have 5 different projects I'm going over, so I really want to spend some time focusing on strategies, things to watch out for, things to avoid, things to include when you're doing projects with kids who hate math, and so on. So let's go ahead and get started. We are going to have some examples. This is a slide from the previous presentation, but I thought it was super important, so I went ahead and included it. Please, if you have never read any books about project-based learning or any type of like alternative way to teach, instead of giving the kids the 1/1,000,000th and one worksheet to fill out, kind of doing things hands-on. If you've never read any books about this, these are some excellent books. I've read several of them. I flipped through several of them. Definitely want to read it and get some insight on it. However, most of those books highlight the ideal situation, right? You have all the kids that are sitting on the edge of their seats. They love math. They want to learn math. And so they really try their hardest. But unfortunately, most of the time, I teach students who hate math. I have kids that will come into my classroom and they are mad at me. They hate me just because I teach math. And so before they even come in, they already have this negative thought process towards math. And so, the projects I get from my students who hate math are not going to be the picture perfect, I can post it on Facebook and brag to all my friends. This is what I did. Usually their projects don't look anything like what I initially had imagined as the perfect project. But guys, my students, they learn so much by doing these projects, and their opinion, their ability, and their attitude towards math changes when they realize that even though they're not good at math, they can still have great projects and they can still be successful in math. Give yourself and your students grace and the ability to make mistakes. If you teach students who don't like math, they're not all watching you like this picture. Most of them probably have their phones on their desk. They might be sleeping. They might be coming up with 1,000,001 excuses to leave the classroom. They might be on their phones, whatever the reason. They're definitely not like go-getters. They're not super excited about math. But the students that I have working on projects, when I tell them, hey, we're going to start a new project, they get so excited because they know they're going to have fun. They know they're going to learn something that is worthwhile, and they need to know whatever I'm going to teach them, they need to know to be successful. So they really pay attention when I am giving those lectures and those explaining math concepts to them. They really pay attention. So this is some examples of some epic math projects that I've done with my students. And I first started this project with pre-cal students. And when I was doing this with pre-cal students, a Algebra 1 teacher asked me if she could use the project for her class. And initially I was like, no way, it's way too hard to do that. There's the math concepts that the kids had to learn was just so hard. And I thought there's no way this teacher can tailor this project to an Algebra 1 level. And I initially said that, and she's like, well, no, I think I can do it. I think I can have them do this. It was definitely with the use of technology. And she had her Algebra 1 students do the same project, and they did a great job. So it doesn't matter what level of math, what their math abilities are, they can do some terrific projects. So I actually did this same project with some students during COVID over Zoom meetings. We did this project, and I started off with 8 students saying, yes, Ms. Pye, we definitely want to do this project. And I had 3 students that actually followed through and did the project. And initially I thought, man, I only had 3. But when I looked at like the record of students who just totally bombed out of school during when they were Zooming, I realized that having 3 out of 8 students succeed and just really nail this project was an amazing accomplishment, especially over Zoom. Um, it was definitely not something that I thought they would be super successful for, but as you can see, this one, the kid did a fabulous job. And and these are the 2 other students that did it. Great job, had tons of different formulas, and they, I was helping them over Zoom. I was able to use the calculator, the teacher software on my computer, and walk them through it. And they were able, sometimes they just had their little handheld and they were holding it up to their computer screen so I could see what they had. And then, and the other times I would have their file on my desktop and I would tell them, okay, tell me what equation do you have for this part of the rat or this part of the, I don't even know what this creature is. And they would read off their equation and I would type it in. And it was amazing. Guys, these kids were like in pre-algebra. They really hadn't even made it to algebra 1 and they were doing these projects. And I was not sure how much of the material they would actually remember and actually understand. And the irony is that the following school year, I had some of the students that did this project on Zoom with me. They came in and they saw other students in class working on that project. And they said, oh, I did that last year. Do you need any help? And they were able to explain how to graph a linear equation and graph a quadratic equation and graph I think they had all sorts of different equations. I think this is a sinusoidal function, and they were able to show them how they remembered how to graph all these different types of equations, and they remembered how to transform them. And it was amazing how, students that I originally would have thought, oh, these guys are definitely don't have the prerequisites for this project. It was amazing how well they did on this project and how much of the material they remembered. All right, so before I move on to any other slides, are there any questions about this project? This is called, I think, in my documents that I shared, it's the semester transformation project, I believe is what I've called it. Mike, I do not have my chat box up. Is there any questions about this, or can we go ahead and go on?
Ellen, I think we're good to go.
Okay. All right. One of the things I do need to point out is that now that we're coming back into the classroom, I know lots of teachers are very concerned about getting their students up to date on where they're supposed to be because of how many different things that they lost. When with COVID, when it hit and we all went remote, some students they threw up their hands and said, nope, I'm not doing school this year. And so some students are a whole year behind. Some students are, just a few months behind, depending on the severity of, how bad the isolation affected them. We have teachers that are trying to work miracles, trying to get their students up to their grade level where they should be. And so most of them are thinking, there's no way I have time to do projects in class. I have to teach all this material. So one of the things I want to encourage you to do is flip your classroom. If you have not done so already, please flip your classroom. Any type of thing that you would lecture and explain, if there's things that you're up on the board for 10, 20 minutes explaining how to do something, it's way too long. You are not using your time wisely. go ahead and flip your classroom, save all those lectures for YouTube videos. And it's pretty easy to find them. There's so many videos available. And at this point, like, I haven't recorded a new video in years because I've realized that if there's a topic I want my students to learn, I can just go to YouTube, I can type in whatever it is I want my students to learn, and I have 500 different videos to choose from. And so I very rarely will record any new videos. The other thing I want us to tell you, there is tons of videos available. You have lots of options. And as you use these videos, you will very quickly realize that there are some teachers that you absolutely love. Go ahead and bookmark those videos. This link is for a video series that Texas Instruments has put together. I saw this, I received an email about it. I was like, oh, I'll check these out. And what I found is some of the math teachers that have posted videos on YouTube are the ones that I absolutely love, and those are my go-to people to find videos for. Oh, it looks like I have this spinny wheel. I don't know if it's going to pop up for me. Let's see. There we go. So, so some of the people, there we go. Some of the people that I really enjoy using their videos to have my students watch. Texas Instrument has worked with them and set up videos. So great videos. Here's one resource. Another one that's also by Texas Instruments is this family of functions videos. Lots and lots of different great videos that I would strongly encourage you guys to check out and use them for your starting point. The next thing I want to encourage you guys to do is always, as much as you possibly can, give your students voice and choice. This is an example whenever I am going to introduce exponential functions, we have an activity and I ask my students, okay, we're going to do this activity or this project. Do you guys want to eat bacteria? Do you want to play with M&Ms, or do you want to become zombies? And most of the time we actually end up with time enough to do more than one of these activities, and the students love them. The zombie activity is a calculator file that Texas Instruments has. I'm sure several of you teachers have used the zombie activity that's posted on Texas Instruments. Can you just do a shout out? Just a yes or no. Have you ever done the zombie use a zombie? I cannot talk anymore. Have you ever used a zombie program that Texas Instruments put together? My students absolutely love it. I use it every year, and it doesn't matter what grade level I'm teaching, what math subject I'm teaching. It's definitely a fun one. And, you know, it's Halloween next Sunday. Perfect time to bring that program out and use it. The M&M ones, that is something, I'm pretty sure I have it somewhere on my files. I don't know if I've shared that with you guys or not. If I haven't and you're interested in it, email me and I will share the information with you. The bacteria one is I make yogurt at home, and I have, you know, I make yogurt, and the longer the yogurt has, or the longer the bacteria has to grow in the yogurt, the more bacteria there is. And I have 2 things of yogurt, exact same batch. One jar has, the bacteria has had 4 hours to develop, and one jar the bacteria has 8 hours to develop. And I let my students taste it if they want to, and they vote on which jar they like the best. And I don't tell them the difference until after everyone's voted. And then most of the time, my students tell me that they like the jar that had 8 hours for the bacteria to grow in. And then I explain the whole growth rate of bacteria. And sometimes they get grossed out about it. and then we end up having a science lesson too, because we talk about good bacteria versus harmful bacteria. And it goes from this very small concept of exponential functions to like world applications and health and science and everything. So it really develops the programs, or develops the curriculum. This is a project that my students are currently, like, they're in the middle of right now. And at the very beginning of the project, I have all my students, they go online and they find their dream car, whatever car they want to purchase. And then we don't do anything for like at least a week. A lot of teaching I need to do with my students about interest rates and compounding interest and making payments. And again, my students that I'm teaching this project to, this is about a pre-cal level project. Not a single one of my students that I'm doing this project with have even passed Algebra 2 yet. And I'm able to teach them the math concepts because it's something that they are very interested to know. Every kid wants to be able to buy a car, and they want to understand how money works and how interest works. And I tell them all the ins and outs about financing a car, and they are riveted because they don't want to spend more money than they have to. They want to get the best deal possible. And so by giving them the choice of picking out their dream car, and then knowing that everything that they're learning about financing this week is helping them to be able to finance this car, they are on the edge of their seats, they're asking questions, they are making sure they understand how to do the calculations in the calculator. And guys, most of these calculations are pretty crazy equations, and my students are doing the calculations because they know they have access to the calculator. They know I'm not expecting them to be able to do the calculations in their head. They have access to technology. They're able to use it. I believe this project is called the Car Finance Project, and I've actually had somebody today that accessed the material online and is using it. All right, Michael, is there any questions about this project before I move on?
Yeah, we actually did have one question about measuring the bacteria in the yogurt.
All right, sorry, you were breaking up there. Was there questions about the bacteria and the what?
Yeah, how do you measure the bacteria in the yogurt? How do you know how much bacteria is in there? Or are you just doing just the time thing? You just time it, you put some bacteria in, and you wait.
So I don't do a lot with the numbers on the bacteria. I believe at one point I did do some research on the growth rate of bacteria, and so just use that growth rate as my for my base number. And then like with growing bacteria, it was really just helping the kids understand the concepts of what the graph of an exponential function would look like, and how could you possibly start with such a small number and have it grow to such a high number so quickly. And so yeah, when I'm using the yogurt and bacteria, I'm not really doing any type of calculations, just helping them to understand the concepts of exponential functions and how and I'll start with hey, we have 4 pieces of bacteria. I'm not even sure what the correct plural form of bacteria is. Is it just bacteria? I believe. And so we'll talk about how that is going to be your y-intercept, and how the growth rate affects how quickly it shoots up in numbers. And so some of these activities are very multi-day activities. Like the car finance project is a multi-day activity. It takes a lot of prep work to teach my students the math concepts that they need, and then we do the project, and it usually takes 2, maybe 3 days to finish the car project. The but some of the activities are really short and fast, and it's like less than a class period, and it's really just helping them understand how these math formulas and how these math concepts apply to real world situations, right? Our students are so used to seeing the worksheet, and they calculate some formula, and then they think, well, I've done the worksheet, now I can dump this information because I'm never actually going to use this information in the real world. But by bringing in activities, by doing activities, they realize, oh, this concept of an exponential function and how quickly my quantity of bacteria increases, that's something that actually I have that applies to real world situations. And interest rate and car loans and mortgage payments, all of those things deal with exponential functions, and it's something that they're going to see every day of their lives. And I will tell you, if I do not start with the car finance project, that's never the first project that we do. It's usually like October, November, December timeframe that we get to this project, just because the formulas are so complex, and I have to my students have to know that they will have access to technology, and they have to know that they don't have to calculate by hand this super complex equation that they are never going to be able to understand. When I do the car finance project, I use the time value money feature in the hold on, in the calculator. So let me go to my calculator program real quick. If you've never used the time value of money feature in the Nspire calculator, it is amazing. If you have 84s, I know the program is in the 84 calculator, but I'll have this calculator up on my projector, and I will take the students through the finance feature in Finance Solver. And by the time we get to this, they understand what N is. They understand that's the number of payments. They understand the interest rate and present value and payment amount and future value. So I do have to do a lot of upfront teaching on what these concepts are, but because they are applicable to something the students are very interested in, and because this is real world information, they are fascinated about what these mean, and they are on the edge of their seats trying to understand, wanting to learn, wanting to understand. So, I tell my students, I don't teach math, I teach life. I teach you how to understand your world and how math applies to your world. So, let me go ahead and go back to my PowerPoint. When I'm doing these projects, yes, oops, I started from the very beginning. Yes, the math concepts can be very complex, and I've gotten to the point where I've realized that even though my students hate math, even though they struggle with basic multiplication, division, whatever, I can still teach them how to these fairly complex math concepts because I use technology. And that brings me to the next thing I want to encourage you guys to do. Yes, our students are so far behind in what they should be able to do in math that you cannot teach just like the shotgun method of just giving them tons of information because they need to know it. So this is an article that I was at a district meeting, and the head of our math department shared this article with us. You can click on the link once you get to it. I'm not going to go to it, but in the article, it talks about, instead of trying to catch up on everything that they need to learn just in case they need it, we need to focus on just in time. information. So when I am teaching when my students are doing the car finance project, I teach them the specific math concepts that they need to know to be successful with this project. And if my students are absent on the day that I've taught that material, they'll come in during lunch and say, hey, Ms. Pye, I was absent yesterday, and John said that you went over this concept. Can you explain it to me? And so instead of avoiding math class, they want to learn, they want to know what did they miss if they were absent. They want to know what information they need just in time to be successful on the project. So that's a concept I really hope speaks to you guys and helps you guys change the way you are teaching. Instead of just dumping tons of information that honestly we know 9 times out of the 10, the kids, it's going to go in one ear and out the other if the kids are actually listening. I've been into classes where I've been super discouraged because I've given them all this really great information, and then the kids are like, I didn't understand any of the last 45 minutes of your lecture. I didn't understand any of it. That can be really frustrating. And so instead of just giving just tons of math, give them what they need for each project. And be specific on your projects. Please don't be afraid that they don't understand concepts. Use technology as much as you need to. This is one project that we did this year, and I was planning on doing this project in November, December, and my students wanted to know, they loved the idea of this project and they wanted to do it right away. So this was one of the first projects we did. Most of my kids hadn't even ever graphed anything before we started this project. And so when I started this project, I was explaining, this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis, this is how to plot a point. This is what a quadratic function looks like. I mean, there was so much information I needed to teach to my students so that they could do this project. And at first I was like, guys, I really don't think you're going to, I didn't say it out loud, but I was thinking it, you never want your students to know that you don't think they're unprepared for it, because your students will surprise you at what they are able to understand and what they're able to do when they understand that it's just-in-time information. It's information that's going to help them to do the project, and they're excited about the project. They will pay attention. They will figure it out. So with this project, what we did is the kids had to graph 3 different polynomials, or not polynomials, 3 different quadratic functions. And we talked about axis of symmetry, and we talked about x-intercepts, and we talked about maximum points and vertices, and all these math concepts that they had never, ever been exposed to. We talked about domain and range, and it was amazing how much they were able to understand through the use of technology, because they were able to graph it and see it and say, oh, I see that this is where the axis of symmetry is. They did a fabulous job on this graph, and they had to create their equation, and they had to have the equation written in factored form and just in transformation form. And we talked about your vertical stretching and compressing. And then they had to do all this information about where the vertex was and where the x-intercepts were. I will tell you, let me go back to this. If you look right here, it really bugged me that this black line was not right at the origin. And then I realized, wait a second, it's okay that the kids are not having a perfect project. It's okay that it's not 100% perfect. They're still understanding the math concepts. And so just remember, kids that hate math, they're not going to have the perfect project. They're not going to have every point exactly where it needs to be. And it's okay as long as they understand these concepts. The fun thing about when we were talking about domain and range is we talked about the difference between the domain and range for the function and the domain and range for the actual situation. Like with this situation, we were launching birds through the air and we were tracking their trajectory to see where they would hit. And they had to launch the bird from the origin and they had to hit one of these pigs. And I told them to plot a point close to the pig's nose. And so they had to hit that point. And then they also had to show me where the bird would land on the ground after it hit the pig. So we talked about the difference between domain and range for this equation that just goes on forever for the domain and goes from the maximum to negative forever versus the project where it's starting at the origin, it stops when the bird lands on the ground. So these were some incredible concepts that if I had just started on the standard, this is about the end of Algebra 1, beginning of Algebra 2 curriculum, if I just did the standard, this is how to teach, what the textbooks teach us to teach, the way the textbook teaches us to teach our students, they totally wouldn't have understand 90% of these concepts. But we were able to do it and with students that really did not like math. I teach at an alternative school. 99% of my students hate math. So one of the things that I do as soon as they come into my classroom is I help them to be comfortable with technology. I always have it available. It's always on my tables. And believe it or not, sometimes Monday morning, so I charge the calculators over the weekend. Sometimes Monday mornings, I don't have the calculators on the table when school starts. And my students are like, Ms. Pike, can I go pass out the calculators? Because they know that calculator is a valuable tool to help them be successful in school. Make it easy to use. I have students that will come in, they'll look at the calculator and freak out because there's so many buttons. They're used to using the standard calculator on their phones. And I'm like, guys, don't freak out. This is just like the best calculator you've ever seen. And if this was a smartphone, you would be begging and pleading to use it. So, I help them realize that it's just technology and that they'll learn how to use it. And I let them use it all the time. And I show them how to use it. This is a project. Rovers are everywhere. They are so easy to get. If you are in a school and you think, oh, I can't afford to get a rover or they're too expensive, guys, Texas Instruments lends out rovers so that you can use them in your classrooms. This is a project that was a one day, it was a Friday, let's have some fun and project that we did. I had my students, I showed them how to use the rover to draw a triangle and a square. We talked about the different results and then they had to draw their own shape. Very basic equations that I had them do. I know that if you download some of the rover activities, there are pages and pages of activities. The kids pretty much do the coding from scratch. I found my students who hate math, they don't want to do it from scratch. They want to have very fast, quick successes and then explain a little bit to them on how it works and then let them play with it, let them experiment with it. So what I did is I had these programs already loaded on the calculator. Thank you, Daniel, for asking. Is it on the 84? Yes. So you can do these with the 84 calculators as well. The rovers work for both the TI-Nspire, the TI-Nspire 2, and the 84 calculators. So yeah, and it's pretty basic. It's not super hard. I talked to my students about the differences between the triangle and the triangle and the square. We look at the code And we talk about why on the square do we have to have the code 4 times where the triangle only has 3 times. And guys, they pick up on the concepts really quickly. As soon as we've done these 2 shapes, I say, what do you notice about the square and the triangle? They always point out that it never closes completely. And we talk about the fact that there's friction. So we're bringing in physics into the classroom. We bring in friction. We talk about how, like, you can tell that my paper is not taped down. If it was taped down, it would be a lot neater. There's always going to be a little bit of a gap because, the world is messy. Mathematicians, we love to do equations, we love to do formulas, but the world doesn't always match perfectly to our formulas. And so that's another concept that I bring into my classroom by doing this activity. After we look at the 2 different formulas, this is the equation, this is the code that I give them. I was like, okay, it's time for you guys to do your own code and create your own shape. And I give them the basic steps of how to have it, where to go to put the forward and turn right and turn left. They're pretty basic shapes. I have them posted, or they're pretty basic commands. I have them posted on the board. Yes, the TI-Nspires do work with the rovers. So my students, they had 45 minutes from the beginning of class where I showed them the square and the triangle to creating their own polygon. And this is just one example of what they did. And then I had one student that, I wanted regular polygons, and then I started seeing these weird shapes. I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. What exactly are you doing? And she says, I'm just trying, I'm experimenting with this. And she kept going and kept going. And class was over, and I said, well, it's time for lunch, so I'm going to go to lunch. If you want to keep playing with this, go ahead and keep playing. And she did. She kept going and going and going. And this was her final result. So she spent her whole lunch, she spent all of 3rd period, her whole lunch period, and then half of 4th period. She wanted to keep going. And luckily for her and for me and for the English teacher was right next door. And she asked her English teacher, hey, I'm almost done with this. Can I please just keep on going? Because I really want to create this diamond. And she programmed the rover to draw this diamond. And once she was done, I think we counted over 21 different attempts. And, I could have said, well, let's go and come up with all the formulas, but she was on a roll. I let her play with it. And it was amazing because, guys, this particular student hates school. She hates school. She hates math even more than she hates school. And I have never seen her so engaged with a math activity. And she had to do a lot of different calculations. She had a compass out, and she was measuring angles and figuring out how far it needs to turn. And she was calculating the distance. It was an amazing and inspiring example of how getting rid of the worksheet, giving them a hands-on activity that they can do really can inspire these kids to do some great things. All right, Michael, before I move on, any questions about this activity?
No, I think looking through, we've had some questions, but I think we've gotten them answered.
Okay.
So far, I think we're good.
Yeah. All right. This is also, please, please, please have fun. Have as much fun as you possibly can. I frequently have my AP or my counselors or my principal coming down to see what's up with all the noise in Miss Pye's class. If my classroom is quiet, that tells me my students are sleeping. They're not doing any math. If it's loud, if they are having fun, that tells me that they are actively engaged in what we're doing and they are learning math. This is a very simple project to do. And I'll be honest, some of it, depending on how complex the games are that the kids develop, it really could be a middle school level math project. Um, I still do it because I think it's important for my students to know that it's okay to have fun with math. I have them create a carnival game, and it has to be a game that is 100% um, left to chance. Like usually a ball toss game is about skill. This game, and we're not going to talk about the spelling errors on his poster. It's okay. But this game, because he required the people to bounce the ball on the table instead of just throwing it directly into the cups. It's really hard to aim when you're bouncing things, ping pong balls off the table. So my requirement is that it has to be a game of chance. You have to be able to calculate the probability. And they have to be able to play the game quickly in the classroom. And so I had my students, my fourth period students, develop these carnival games. And then all day on a Friday through every class period, my students played all the carnival games that they developed. And what happened is, before they played the games, the kids calculated the theoretical probability, what are the odds based on the math formulas that we created. And then the students played the games and they calculated the experimental probability. And some very interesting things happened, particularly with this game, because if you see the experimental probability, 1 divided by 495, it's kind of hard to calculate that or compare that to the decimal, but it's a really small decimal. It's a very small chance of somebody winning. And we were able to talk about, what do ratios mean? What does 1 out of 495 actually mean in the real world? And we talked about how, if this game of tossing ping pong balls into the cups, a person theoretically would have a 1 out of 495 tries. One of those times they should be able to win. And so that was the theoretical probability. And then the students played the game and we did the experimental probability. And the student that won the large prize is actually the one that developed the game. And I totally knew that he cheated and cheated to get all 4 of the. So with this game, you had to get the 4 ping pong balls in the 4 green cups. I totally knew that he cheated, and I let him cheat, and I let him record the 1 win, and I totally let him do that because then we had a very interesting conversation about what carnival game owners do when they catch people cheating. And it instead of having just a math lesson, we had a life lesson about companies that have people steal from them. They suck up the loss. That's part of running a business, is people are going to try to cheat you. And the student who had cheated at his own game was very upset that he had to calculate how much it would cost for the 1 large prize because he knew the person cheated because he was the one doing the cheating. It was an amazing lesson, and just some of the conversations I'm able to have with my students. I don't just teach math, I teach life, because we have life lessons that we have that come up from these activities and these experiments. So with this project, they had to pick prizes. So these were the prizes and these were theoretical prizes. We were not charging my students. I did not charge any of my students $3.50 to play the game, but they had to calculate their profit. They had to calculate how many their loss and how many prizes that they would have to pay out. And then they calculated their profit or their net income. which was really some incredible, yes, math is life. It was some incredible lessons, very invigorating, and it got the students interested in um, being entrepreneurs. It got them interested in developing something where they can make money, and just giving them a small taste of, what do you have to consider if you're going to open a business? What are things that you're going to have to think about and consider? So it was really a great time, great lesson. Um, those were just 5 of the lessons, and all 5 of these lessons I've done with my students either during COVID when we were remote with the transformation projects, or just this year in class this year. I have tons more projects. There are so many really fun hands-on activities and projects you guys can do with your students. There's no limit. Just think about, what are your students interested in? If you have a lot of athletes in your class, it's really fun to look at sports stats, and and height and weight of athletes, and there's so many ways that you can really engage your students by bringing in activities, bringing in projects for them to do instead of handing them another worksheet. It is possible. Technology is vital. If you're going to do projects with students who hate math, you have to have technology available for them to use and explore. All right. So I know I've been talking for a very long time. Thank you guys for listening. I know I've had lots of comments. Again, this is my email address if you need to write it down. The great thing about these presentations is you get a copy of the video recording. I am done talking, so Mike, I think it's time for a drawing, right?
Yes, it is. So before we do the drawing, just a couple things. As Ellen said, you guys were pretty chatty today, which is awesome hearing some of your thoughts. Please feel free to continue that conversation on any of our major social media outlets. We'd love to hear from you. If you've been holding off and have any last-minute questions for Ellen, please try to get those asked. I know she'll do her best to get those questions answered. As promised, one lucky winner tonight is going to receive a TI graphing calculator. And tonight's lucky winner is David Steingrat. So David, congratulations. We'll be in touch over email in the coming days to give you a little more information and to ask you which TI graphing calculator you're going to be picking. To receive a certificate of attendance, go ahead and click the link in the chat window. Also listed is a link for the documents that Ellen used tonight. And we also included Ellen's first talk in those documents as well. And if you're watching this on demand, go ahead and copy that link into your favorite browser to receive your certificate. When you leave the webinar tonight, a brief survey will automatically appear in your browser. Your feedback guides us as we plan future online events, and we really hope you'll share your thoughts in the post-webinar survey. And if you have any follow-up questions after the webinar, if they're specific to what Ellen talked about tonight, feel free to reach out to her. I know she shared her email address. If they are just more TI related, I saw there was a question about Rover. Those questions are great to be geared, directed towards us. Feel free to give us a call at 1-800-TI-CARES or drop us an email, ti-cares@ti.com. Ellen, thanks so much for everything you put together tonight. It definitely made me excited to go back into my classroom tomorrow and get my students excited about math.
Thank you, Michael. I did notice one person asked what other carnival games did my students come up with. Let's see, we had a dice game where they had 2 dice. They had to roll a dice, and if they got a certain number, they would win a certain prize. There was a spinner game where the they had to spin, and depending on what color they landed on, determine what prize level they got. There was one where they had to pick an eraser out of a bag, and if they got there was a whole bag of different colored erasers, and if they got the green eraser, it was a large prize. If they got the blue eraser, it was a medium prize, and so on. There was like probably 34 different erasers, and there was only one green one. um, so those are just some very simple games that my students did. In the past, I've had a lot more advanced games where sometimes the dice were, instead of being a regular 6-sided dice, it was a 20-sided dice. So there was lots and lots of fun games that you can do. With that, there was a video, I want to say Mike Reber, I cannot remember his name. It's on YouTube. It's about carnival games and how so many of them are scams. We watched the video before we started the project, and the kids were really excited to be able to scam their other students. So, wow, lots of other questions. I cannot answer all these questions tonight, so please email me if you have other questions. There's so many different places you can find activities. Thank you guys for participating. Wow, I'm just kind of going through. Michael, did you see any other questions that I should answer?
I think we're good. I did see a comment about the certificate. Might not be generating for everyone. If it's not working for whatever reason tonight, just hang tight. You'll automatically get a follow-up email within a couple days, and that follow-up email will contain links to the recording so you can watch this again at your own pace, links to the certificate, and links for the document as well. So thanks again to everyone for your questions and comments. And Ellen, thanks so much for putting everything together for tonight.
You're welcome. It was fun. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks again, everyone. We hope to see you back online next week. Nope, 2 weeks. I believe we're in 2 weeks. So we'll see you back online real soon. Have a great night.